Hi everyone, welcome back to a new post today. Today let's look at some of the highlights of the Economic Survey 2025 and 26 that was recently presented to the Parliament by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Let's do this episode in parts and let's today look at the state of the Indian economy along with fiscal developments that the government says has a positive impact on the growth of Indian economy. With regard to the state of the economy, the government now speaks about especially the GDP growth. Apart from that, it also speaks about the per capita national income, agriculture, forestry, fishing, industry, the contribution of industry, services, the increase in foreign exchange reserves, and also the drop in fiscal deficit. That is, the expenditure part is reducing and the revenue of the government is increasing. So these are the points that were touched by the government on the state of the Indian economy. Let's see what are the highlights given by the Economic Survey of India with regard to the state of the Indian economy for 2025-26. Number one is that the global environment remains fragile and India is a green spot in this fragile global environment. However, intensifying geopolitical tensions like the Trump and the Greenland issue, Russia-Ukraine issue, Israel and the Hamas issue. Apart from that, the new tensions between Israel and Iran in the West Asian region all have shocks that will definitely that will bring a negative feature or impact on the Indian economy with trade fragmentation, financial vulnerabilities as well. Number two is that against this fragile environmental situation, India's performance stands out. This is what the Economic Survey says. It says that the GDP growth rate at the first advanced estimates of financial year 2026 is 7.4% and reaffirming India's status as the fastest growing major economy in a fourth consecutive year. Apart from that, it says that the private final consumption grew by 7.0% in financial year 2026, reaching 61.5% of the GDP, which has been higher since 2012. This growth is now supported by low inflation, stable employment and increase in real purchasing power. Strong agriculture performance has bolstered rural consumption, while improvement in urban consumption is aided by tax rationalization, which the government has recently given during Diwali period by rationalizing the GST tax rates, bringing them only to 4 slabs and indicating a broad-based demand momentum. So the investment, number 4 is that the investment activity has been strengthened in the financial year 2026 with gross fixed capital formation growing 7.8% and its share remaining steady at 30% of the GDP. This momentum was buoyed by sustained public capital expenditure and revival of private investment activity. On the supply side, the Economic Survey says in point number 5 that services now remain the major part of growth of Indian economy. We are a service-based sector economy now, and it has contributed the most to your GDP. This trend indicates a broad-based expansion across the service sector. And looking at the data given by the Government of India, fiscal deficit at 24-25 stands at 4.8% of the GDP. We have a foreign exchange reserves of 701 billion. At 24-25, the services growth rate at GDP is 9.1% for 24-25. Industry growth rate is 6.4%. Agriculture now has contributed less growth rate at just 3.1% compared to the previous year of 4.6%. Previous financial year of 4.6%. Per capita national income has increased to 2.20 lakh at the current prices in the year 2025 and 26, and the GDP growth rate is at constant prices at 6.8% to 7.2% for the year 7.4% for the year 2025 and 26, and forecasting 6.8 to 7.2% in 26-27. These were the highlights of the data given. Overall, with GDP growth positively above the mark, it is, and also a growth compared to 24-25, it is a positive status. Per capita income has grown from 1.69 lakh at current prices in 2022 to 2.20 lakh. There's a steady increase in per capita income. This is also, the government shows, is a positive nature. Agriculture, livestock, forestry, fishing growth rate has decreased from 4.6% to 3.4%, therefore decreasing the contribution of agriculture, livestock, fishery to and allied sectors to the GDP. Industry growth has grown from 5.9% to 6.2%. Services have registered from a growth rate of 7.2 to 9.1 in 2025-26, and foreign exchange reserves have grown steadily. That's what the economic survey shows, from 578 billion US dollars to 701 billion US dollars. Fiscal deficit has gradually come down from 6.7 to 4.8% of the GDP. These were the highlights given by the Government of India in State of the Indian Economy. Now let's look at the fiscal development. Fiscal development means managing the expenditure revenue of the government and also garnering the taxes by the government. What does it say? What does the economics say on the fiscal side? It says that the government has a prudent fiscal management, which means the government is able to manage the expenditure and the revenue and balance, and has strengthened credibility, reinforced India's confidence in the macroeconomic fiscal framework. This has been showed and by the growth in the sovereign credit ratings upgrade by various agencies like S&P Global Rating and Investment Information Inclusive Limited, etc. Number 2 says that centre's revenue receipts have strengthened at an average of 8.5% of the GDP. This means that there has been improvement in the revenue collection, both direct and indirect taxes. This improvement, the government says, was because of non-corporate tax collections, which rose in the post-pandemic period. The direct tax base, number 3, direct tax base has expanded steadily with increase in the number of people filing their income tax returns. Maybe that's because of the drop in the income tax returns rates, and they have been increased from 6.9 crore to 9.2 crore from 2022 to 2025, which means a growth in the Government of India's direct tax revenue. High return filing reflects improved compliance. They also are reflecting greater use of technology, better tax administration, growing number of individuals entering the formal economy, that's the tax-based economy. Number 4 says that the growth in GST collection from April and December 2025 stood at 17.4 lakh crore, registering a year-on-year growth of 6.7%, which means there has been a rise in the indirect tax revenue of the centre. GST revenue growth is aligned with the prevailing nominal GDP growth conditions. And at number 5, the capital expenditure of the Government of India has rose from 2.7% of the GDP in the pre-pandemic period to 3.9%. Capital expenditure increases the assets of the country and reduces the liabilities of the country, and it is higher to 4.4% of the GDP in 2025. At number 6, the special assistance to the states for capital expenditure to increase assets and reduce liabilities, which means is also maintained around 2.4% of the GDP. Although the government hasn't spoke anything about the devolution of income to the states, and the combined fiscal deficit of the states broadly stands at 2.8% of the GDP in the post-pandemic period, similar to pre-pandemic levels, reflecting emerging pressures on the state finances. And apart from that, the last 8 points says that government has reduced its government to debt GDP ratio by 7.1 percentage points in 2020, maintaining a high public investment. This also means that when the debt to GDP reduces, the government's liability towards interest payments also decreases, and the same money can be used for development. This also means that a lot of investment is coming from the private sector. This means that the government has reduced its expenditure and also borrowings as well. So let's look at some of the points with regard to external sector now. External is nothing but your import and export. So what does the economic survey say as the external sector? Now, between the financial year 2005 and 2025, India's share of global merchandise doubled from 1% to 1.8%, while its share of global commercial service exports doubled from 2.43% to from 2% to 3%. According to the Trade and Development report of the United Nations Agency, India is ranked among the leading economies of trade partner diversification, ranking third in the global south and recording a trade diversity score higher than the global north economies or the European and the American economies. At number 3, total exports are recorded at USD 825 billion in financial year 2025. That is registering a 6.1% year-on-year growth, primarily driven by growth in services sector, which means that the good and foreign exchange earning is increasing. That is, foreign exchange earnings are increasing for the government of India, and it also means boost to service-based economy in the country. Non-petroleum exports have reached a high record of USD 374 billion, while non-petroleum, non-gem jewelry exports constitute 4/5 of the merchandise exports. Service exports touched a all-time high in the financial year 2025 to 387 billion, growing at 13.6%, reinforcing India's position as a service-based economy, mainly constituting the ITs, that is the information and technology business services sector. India's current account deficit remains moderate, supported by net inflows from services, exports and remittances that offset the trade deficit as well. And apart from that, India remained the largest recipient of remittances around the world, supporting stability in external account. The share of remittances, which are non-interest bearing money that the government gets from its diaspora staying abroad, from the share of remittances has increased, especially from advanced economies, reflecting a growing contribution of Indian diaspora staying outside the country, and that to skilled and professional workers. India's foreign exchange reserves increased to US $701 billion as of 2026 January, providing an import cover of 11 months and also covering 94% of external debt, thereby strengthening resilience against the external volatility. So these were some of the major points and highlights given by the economic survey tabled in the Parliament for the year 2025-26, tabled by the Finance Minister with regard to the state of the Indian economy, the fiscal management of the Government of India with regard to revenue, expenditure and also deficit as well, and what is India's place now in the external economy, that is with regard to imports and exports, remittances and also the foreign exchange reserves as well. So if you did, please do like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to comment if you found the points useful, and I shall see you in my new post. Until then, it's very happy learning.